Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about this series, limited series, season 1 finale of Moon Knight. It was called Gods and Monsters, and as it starts, Mark's body is being fished from the water where it fell when shot, and Harrow expresses regret over his body that it came to him having to die. He then takes whatever that doodad was that Mark had gotten out of Alexander the Great's tomb and adds it to his cane, and this seemingly increases its power. Layla then comes around a corner out of hiding and cries over Mark's body and lets him slip back into the water after retrieving the scarab from him. Harrow sets out in a convoy to go and release Amit, and when he's stopped by the local military, he uses the cane to whammy all these guys and extract their souls from them, sparing one guy because he was apparently a good person. Tawaret then starts possessing the different dead soldiers so she can communicate with Layla, who is there masquerading as one of Harrow's guys. And she tells Layla to smash the statue of Khonshu so that he can be released and resurrect Mark. And I guess she kind of asks her to be her avatar, and she's like, yeah, no. Meanwhile, Harrow confronts the gods, or their avatars, I should say, in the Hall of the Gods. And, they realize what he's there for, and they're opposing him. And he's able to defeat them, instantly, just by, zapping them with the cane. They don't even really show it, which is kind of weird. And, I don't really buy that he was able to do that. I mean, we're talking about Osiris and Isis, and he was just able to put them down all at just in a blink. I'm not buying that. I think it was just a cop-out. I think they copped out there of having that sort of fight scene. At least some kind of fight scene if he's going to win, which, I don't think would have made sense anyway, but, they could have made a scene of it. I think if some of the gods had then said, you know what, we're going to side with this guy, and then, helped him defeat, the other half of the gods, that might have made sense, but they didn't do that. They just had him, put them down all together, in an instant. So, I don't know, I wasn't buying that. Anyway, Layla goes looking for the statue of Khonshu because she needs to break it. Speaking of breaking statues, Harrow gets a hold of Amit's statue and breaks it, at which point the rather impressive god Amit shows up quite powerfully. And of course, she's a big, crocodile. She then tells Harrow that his scales are out of balance, and he basically says, I understand if I, you have to kill me, it's cool. If you have to pass judgment on me, I understand, I accept it. And she's like, no, it's not for stuff you've done, it's stuff you're gonna do. He's like, okay, well then still kill me so that I don't inflict pain on the world, which is kind of weird because he's the bad guy in this piece, but here he is that's what you call a true believer, right? And she's like, no, you're gonna work for me. But over where Layla is, she finds the statue and she frees Khonshu, but she declines his offer to become his avatar because she's like, no, you made Mark's life a living hell. But he says it's going to be necessary for him to have an avatar if they're going to recapture Amit. We then join Mark in the field of reeds where he's standing basically all agog over what he sees. And Tawaret is there with him, and he says how extremely peaceful it is. But he decides he doesn't want to stay because he wants to retrieve Stephen from the Duat, and he then sets out to do this. Khonshu then confronts Amit about her plan for the world, and they exchange words. Mark then finds Stephen and tells him that Stephen saved his life just by existing and by always being hopeful, and that he was really Mark's only real superpower. The only real superpower he ever had was Stephen. And then he manages to free Stephen by uniting their hearts before they have to sort of outrun a really bad sandstorm that starts up right at that moment. And it was tricky because I guess it was Stephen who was limping, or was it Mark? Because he kind of drained himself. I don't know. One of them was limping. And so they're like trying to get away from the sandstorm. We then go back to Khonshu and Amit, who have now elevated their confrontation from talking to kicking each other's asses. Back out in the Duat, Tawaret shows up on the boat and basically enables Mark and Steven to make it through the gate back into the world of the living, and this resurrects Mark's body, and he immediately becomes Moon Knight, and it was pretty cool, actually. He then approaches Khonshu, who has left the fight in Cairo to go to Mark's location, and they have a little conversation before Steven takes control as Mr. Knight and says that he and Mark are now a package deal, at which point Mark takes over again, and they go about the business of stopping Amit. He basically leaps up into the sky to fly to Cairo, Superman style. It's pretty cool. Back in the Hall of the Gods, after speaking with Osiris's avatar, who's like all dazed and confused and hurt, Layla learns how to make Amit vulnerable. And she decides that she will actually allow herself to become Tawaret's avatar. And it was a funny scene where they're like first integrated and they're trying to like figure out how to move and stuff. It was kind of funny. Harrow then takes to the top of a pyramid and uses the staff to start judging everyone all at once, and their souls start leaving their bodies, and as Amit consumes them, she's getting bigger and bigger and bigger to like the size of a mountain. We then see that Mark has in fact made it all the way to Cairo, flying Superman style, as I said, and he attacks Harrow, which sets off a fight in midair between them. All the while, Khonshu tries to take out Amit, and he's now the same size as her, which was pretty cool. These two giant gods like fighting. Layla then joins the fight between Mark and Steven as Tawaret's avatar, and she's all decked out in this cool Egyptian superhero outfit with these like shield wings. It was pretty cool, actually. And with her fighting beside them, Steven and Mark take turns going back and forth between Moon Knight and Mr. Knight as they're dealing with Harrow and his people. As they're fighting, Harrow tells Mark that if Amit had been allowed to rule, his brother would still be alive, and that he is now the only, obstacle preventing her from creating a peaceful world. And he ends up getting Mark down, and just as he's about to kill Mark, aka Moon Knight, somebody else takes control of the body and takes out Harrow and incapacitates him. And Mark kind of comes to and he goes, "Steven, was that you?" And Steven's like, "No, it wasn't me, mate." And they have no idea what happened. But then Layla and Mark go to a spot and they start chanting a spell to trap Amit inside of Harrow's body. Once that happens, Khonshu tells Mark to kill the two of them by killing Harrow, but Layla convinces him to stop and to tell Khonshu to do it himself, which he does. And he then says that he wants Khonshu to release he and Steven, which he does. And then Mark finds himself back in the asylum with Steven talking to Harrow, as the doctor. But after a moment or so, he wakes up in his bed back in his flat and can even seem to communicate with Steven without having to use a mirror. And they can even like go back and forth in being in control of the body without needing, to surrender control actively or like ask the other one to do it. Anyway, he tries to get out of bed, and of course he can't because he's still chained to it. And then the credits roll. But wait, we're soon back in a clinical setting in what looks like a hospital where a mysterious figure shows up to take Harrow away in a wheelchair. And as he's doing this, he's rolling past a whole bunch of dead bodies in the hospital. And when he gets outside to a waiting limousine, Harrow finds Khonshu there. He tells Harrow that Mark has no idea just how precarious his situation is. And then he introduces Harrow to his friend, Jake Lockley, who apparently is a third personality inside of Mark. And then he shoots and kills Harrow dead. And then as the limo drives away, we can see that the plate says Spectre. So for some reason, Khonshu didn't kill Harrow/Amit on the spot. And he ended up in a hospital, and then Khonshu had to go get him with the help of this Jake person, and I guess I'm just realizing now that that's Jake in control of Mark's body at that point. And they're in a limousine with the plate that says Spectre on it, which of course is Mark's last name. So, wow, okay. They left it way open for a second season, so we'll have to see what happens on that score. I'd like to see a second season. I thought this was enjoyable. The thing is that this particular finale kind of felt a little limp after last week's really powerful episode. And I don't want to overstate that because the fight scenes were very cool, the way they choreographed them and showed them and everything. But I don't know, there was a lot of very slow buildup, and I didn't really feel there was ever really a climax or much of a pow kind of ending, so I don't know. I mean, it was still enjoyable, but that's kind of how it left me feeling. And I wasn't really happy with the whole thing about how they just sort of, it seems like they didn't want to do a big melee fight scene between all the gods and Harrow and his people. And they literally cut away when he was trying to zap, when he goes to zap them with the power of his cane. And then the next thing you know, they're all down. So that was cheesy. And the idea that he could defeat all of the gods' avatars, Osiris, Isis, in one fell swoop, which maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was a fight, but they don't show it. So it was just lame. And then, after that, both Mark and Layla are able to bend Harrow off in turn. And then together, with the third person taking over, they end up actually taking him down. But all of the gods' various avatars together couldn't. Like I said, it would make sense if they went to have a conversation and some of the gods were like, you know what, we're with him. And then some of the gods took on some of the other gods. It would have been like, okay, that makes sense. And then they somehow eliminated each other. But no, that's not what they showed. So it was a little strange. I don't know. But anyway, I think it was an entertaining season or whatever. I thought that Oscar Isaacs was fantastic the whole way through. I liked Tawaret. She was cool. I liked all of the scenes in the Duat. I thought it looked magical. It was really, really awesome. So I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars as a season or limited series. And I'm looking forward to, a second edition. If they do one, I would watch it. I enjoyed it. So there you have it. That's my review of the series finale of Moon Knight. I'll be back with reviews of whatever Marvel sends us next. Until then, I wish you peace and long life.